Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Francis with Life Story Financial, and today I'm going to talk about work. So, working is something that we all have to do to pay the bills and prepare for the future. But what I found is that somewhere between the time that you're just starting out with your first real job and then eventually retiring, we're all looking for something more than just a job. It seems like once our basic needs are met, we desire meaning and purpose in our professional lives. I feel so lucky that I've been able to find that in my work as a financial advisor and definitely want the same for my clients. That's why I was so excited to talk to Heather Pridemore, who's in a networking group with me. She's a certified coach and the owner of Pridemore Coaching. She specializes in helping individuals find career paths that resonate with their values, passions, and strengths, and empowers her clients to overcome their obstacles, redefine their career paths, and achieve fulfillment in their professional lives. I enjoy talking to Heather because we have so much in common when it comes to life philosophy. So I'm going to talk to her today a little bit about her career journey and then how she helps others find that. So Heather, thank you for joining me. And the first thing I want to kick off with is what led you to your big career change into coaching and how you discovered that there was a big need for career development coaching in particular.
So, like many, I was impacted by some restructuring and downsizing in early 2023. And when I left my corporate job, I thought I was going to go into another corporate position. So I hired a executive coach because it'd been a number of years since I had looked for a job, and I really wanted someone who could advise me and make sure I was set up for success. And as we were working through that process, I realized I actually didn't want to go back into a corporate role. There's a lot of reflection that takes place
Definitely.
um, in an executive coaching process. And so through that, reflection, I was able to realize that what I had really enjoyed the most throughout my entire career was the ability to help develop people. And where that insight came from was through all of my leadership experience. So I had been coaching and mentoring people and found that there were some patterns, right? Some common obstacles. People were hitting these invisible barriers to success. And I think that's especially prevalent for people who are coming first generation white collar professional. So I knew I could have impact because I had experienced it with my team, and I
Yeah,
wanted an opportunity to be able to do that at scale.
that makes sense. Yeah, and in a way, it's almost as if the downsize allowed you the space that you needed to really think about what you wanted to do next.
Exactly. I think when you're in a job, especially like for me, my identity was very tied to my work. And so I didn't really have the space in that environment to really sort of step back, reflect, and evaluate things. But in having that restructuring take place, and for me to sort of have that opportunity and really a privilege, because of where I was in my career, that privilege to kind of step back and say, what is it that I really want to be doing next? It
Yeah.
was a really good thing in the end.
That kind of leads into my next question is what point do you find in your clients' careers that they decide to come to you for coaching and think about something different?
Yeah, I think for most people, it's event triggered. So, I mean, the big ones, of course, are things like a layoff, or maybe you got passed over for a promotion. And so a lot of feelings come up in those experiences, and you're looking for someone to help. But I mean, there are other situations as well, but it's kind of like that saying, the straw that broke the camel's back. There's always some kind of trigger point where people realize, hey, I need some help. And there are many types of coaches. I mean, you don't have to get a coach just for career development. There are life coaches, there are entrepreneurial coaches, there's all kinds of coaches. But I have really tried to focus on the mid-career professional because I see that a lot of coaches in the career space are either helping people find a new job, or they cater to C-suite and executive level clients. And I feel like from my own experience and from working with teams over the years, that the mid-career professional is really the one who needs some assistance because they kind of find this place where they get stuck, right? So someone with several years of experience who's done well so far, maybe even experienced a few promotions along the way, they start to feel that maybe they're up against some, obstacles, some invisible barriers, things have kind of plateaued. And those are the people who I really want to help kind of break through that plateau to the next level.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's kind of the whole middle manager conundrum. So, what do you see as the biggest professional hurdle for someone who's deciding to make a career change? And do you think there are financial hurdles?
Yeah, I'm so there's this saying, what got you here won't get you there. And I think for many of us, especially those who come from maybe like a working class or blue collar family, we rely very heavily on hard work, and hard work will carry us pretty far, you know? But there is this point where you kind of get that plateau. So what happens at that plateau is you stop experiencing the sort of professional development, but you also don't get the sort of financial benefits of a continuing, like your career continuing to grow. And so it's interesting because the skills needed to make a career change or to advance in your job are also the same ones that you need in order to navigate financial opportunities, for example, like negotiating a pay raise. They tend to be interconnected. And so navigating your career development and your financial health, they both require the ability to be like to have self-advocacy skills, and that requires a level of continuous learning and upskilling. And so all these things are very tied together.
Yeah, agreed. It's interesting. I know a lot of mid-career professionals choose that time in their career to maybe start their own businesses or seek out entrepreneurship just as you did. And what's nice to know about that is the statistics are very much in favor of those that are middle-aged starting a business and having it be successful compared to people that are doing it in their 20s. So,
I think that has a lot to do too with transferable skills, Michelle. So if you think about it, you know, I've had 13 years of corporate experience, plus I was in the nonprofit space before that. And you pick up a lot of uh, different skills, wearing a lot of different hats and being around different kinds of people and being exposed to different kinds of projects. And so with all of that experience, by the time you get to, let's say, mid-career or middle age, and you decide, hey, you know what, I think I'm going to go and start this business, you have a lot of tools in your toolbox that you might not have had if you had tried to start a business, you know, in your 20s.
definitely. Well, I think that's the benefit of working with a coach like yourself too, is being able to critically look at the skills and tools that you have. A lot of times, what I see, especially with women, is that we underappreciate and underutilize some of our skills. We just don't think about them as marketable.
Right. Well, and I think too, a trend I see that relates to that, Michelle, is people will go and they'll go back to school, they'll get certificates. They're always trying to add some sort of validation to their worthiness. And what they sometimes miss is that often they already have all the skills necessary. You know, they meet all of the qualifications, but that insecurity about, you know, maybe feeling insufficient or not meeting the roles or responsibilities of something kind of hold them back. And so they try to use continuous learning or education as a way of sort of feeling more confident. And don't get me wrong, I'm a big believer in getting, you know,
Yeah,
upskilling and continuous learning. I just would prefer that people do it in a way that is coming more from a place of power than maybe a place of like fear or not feeling worthy.
I like that. Yes, more empowerment.
Mm-hmm.
So, since I specialize in working with women, I have found that a lot of women who re-enter the workforce after a big life change, namely having children or recovering from a divorce, maybe sometimes both, have to start out again. So, what advice would you have for women who are either unhappy in their careers or they're re-entering the workforce?
Yeah, I think I'd really encourage both groups to kind of begin by just assessing their goals beyond just finding a job. Um, the reason I emphasize that is a lot of times, especially when we, you know, if we've been laid off or we feel sort of a sense of desperation or we're in a position of where we're having to do something because of circumstances that are out of our control, we sort of just take a job to take a job. But if we can just take a moment to begin by sort of assessing like the bigger goals, then we can get really clear on what's in and out of scope for us. So we can evaluate roles and companies and put ourselves more in that empowered situation that we were just talking about. And I recognize for some, like, sometimes you just have to take a job to get going. But I would just encourage those people not to get stuck also in like black and white thinking where it's like, well, I've taken this job, so now I'm stuck here. You can take a job and continue looking for that right position that sort of fits all of your goals and your values and gets you more in alignment with what you're trying to accomplish. I'd also recommend some professional help. At a minimum, consider a professional resume writer, especially if you've been out of the workforce for a while. What you want is someone who's really good at that technical writing, but who's also able to sort of shape a professional narrative. Because at the end of the day, what you're doing is selling yourself to a potential employer. And so you want someone who is really good, like highly skilled in that area, so they can take not only your past experiences and your transferable skills, but they can kind of weave it together into a package, into a story that's going to make a really great narrative as you're navigating those job interviews and cover letters and all of those things. So I think that having like a good career narrative is like a really great place to start, and can really make those connections between sort of the work history and those future career objectives. I'd also say consider working with a coach. I know this can be especially beneficial for people who are maybe like unhappy and needing to change, but sometimes those folks don't know where to start. And so having that like thought partner in the coach is a great place to do some of that reflection, to figure out like where you want to go. Because let's be honest, Michelle, most of us start our careers, we're young, we're excited, and we just kind of get swept up in our jobs, right? I mean, my career, I was in automotive for a long time. I didn't set out in life thinking, oh, I'm going to work in automotive. Like I got swept up in it. So I think if we can take that period of change as a great inflection point to sort of consider what we really want, and we can use the tools at our disposal. But I do think in some cases, at least hiring the resume writer and maybe a coach.
Definitely. I mean, what I'm hearing is that it's just so important to take the time to reflect and empower yourself before rushing it through any of this.
100%.
And I definitely love the concept of a career story because we all have a story to tell, and that includes our job experience. Even if some of it wasn't in an official capacity, it might have been our job as a stay-at-home mom.
And there's always skills there. And that's where I think having someone who like a resume writer who is very skilled at sort of weaving those stories together. And so I guess to make sure you vet the person that you're using, don't just take just anybody. Make sure if you're making that kind of investment, that kind of transition, that you're working with someone who can really, understand the story that you're telling and then weave it together into all the things that it needs to be in order to tell that professional narrative.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's the perfect segue into how you can help folks do these things. So, can you tell me a little bit about your meeting process and the services that you offer?
Sure. Yeah. So I typically start with a 30-minute no obligation discovery call. And this is really a chance for someone to share their story with me, right? It helps me understand their background, their career aspirations, and it helps me also figure out like what they want that coaching program to look like. So when I work with someone, it's always a 12-session coaching engagement, but it's set up as 12 sessions because we could do that, for example, 3 months because you're looking for a new job, or 6 months because you want to do the stuff to kind of get you ready to look for a new job. And then you want to save some sessions to maybe do some interview preparation, or 12 months because maybe you're someone who's like, I actually love where I work, but I'm trying to get to that next phase. And so we can spread those sessions out a little bit so that we can be strategically working together over the course of a year and working towards something like a promotion. These things can be changed, they can be customized. The whole goal is that we're tailoring the coaching program and that we're keeping it structured yet flexible. The program also includes a 3-part Hogan assessment. And if you're not familiar, it's one of the personality tests that's in the career space. The reason I like Hogan, though, is most personality tests are about who we think we are. Hogan is more about our reputation. It's more about how people experience us. And so it's a really great assessment, not only to better understand ourselves, but then also to understand how we show up in the workplace and to understand our values so that we can better assess potential matches with like certain roles or certain companies.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, I really appreciate all the flexibility that you offer. So, if someone is interested in working with you, where can they find you? Where can they listen in?
So I'm in a few places. Of course, I have my website, pridemorecoaching.com, and I'm on Instagram under the same at Pridemore Coaching, Heather Pridemore on LinkedIn. And then, of course, I have a podcast called Small Acts of Rebellion. And always some really great nuggets of wisdom come out of that show. And I'm interviewing everyday people, entrepreneurs, W-2 employees, white collar, blue collar workers, just like trying to get so many diverse perspectives. So it could be a helpful place to start if you're looking for some inspiration.
Yeah, I was honored to be a recent guest on it and really enjoy listening. And I find it's really inspirational to hear other people's career stories and how that can relate to your particular situation. So, to see more information about Heather and link to all this information, click below, or you can find me online at lifestoryfp.com/blog. Thanks so much. And thank you for joining me, Heather.
Thank you, Michelle.